Hello and welcome to episode 30 of 4 Random Books. Episode 30 of 4 Random Books. And I am recording this, believe it or not, on the 7th of September 2020. And this is coming out in March. So, episode 30. Whatever will we discuss in episode 30? Well, courage and personal accounts. That's what today's theme is. That's what this episode's theme is. This lovely book in Foreign Fields compiled by Dan Collins. Heroes of Iraq and Afghanistan in their own words. It's a lovely book for that thing. It's got pictures in. As you know, I do love a nice picture. Especially when they involve canines. Glad to hear that doggy is now living in the UK nice and safely. It was always possible that they had arranged it to detonate if it was disturbed, so I worked quite slowly, photographing everything as I went. At the back of the thing, I found 15.5 meters of coil detonating cord, which was a good moment. They had used exactly the same thing in the bomb which killed Corporal Brackenbury. So we knew we were onto our man. That cord is highly dangerous stuff. It's crush sensitive. It can function if you drop something on it, or cut it with pliers. The IED, it transpired, was a professionally manufactured and highly sophisticated explosive form projectile device controlled by complex sensor and telemetry modules. We finally finished taking everything apart and bragging it up for further analysis by 8:30 p.m. It was a great example of teamwork, from the youngest squaddy and the warrior spotting the thing, to me, and then to the highest level of forensic science. Getting it out in one piece helped enormously with the development of countermeasures, so it was obviously very satisfying. Anything we can do in our trade that can help protect the soldiers on the ground, that is the greatest feeling. We are protecting the guys who, in turn, protect us when we are on the ground. Tragically, shortly afterwards, Second Lieutenant Richard Shearer was himself to die in a roadside bomb along with Private Leon Spicer and Philip Hewitt. He and Private Spicer were 26 years old, Private Hewitt just 21. That was an enormous blow, the worst day of our tour. I had got to know Richard. He was becoming a friend and was a very popular guy. He had a habit of locating IDs. Some of them were falsies, and we would tease him for it. I can't believe you got me out of bed for this, Rich. But most often he was spot on the money. A very good soldier, as were the two privates, and an excellent young officer. The team got to know him and got to know his call sign. It's horrible, awful when we got to had to go out to the device which killed him. Going out to Iraq and doing this job, things like Richard Shearer and the other blokes dying, it makes you think. I don't like hearing people have a go at soldiers for doing their job. That is very frustrating. Some people don't like what we do. Maybe they don't like us being in Iraq. Well, I'd rather they kept it to themselves. I think we're doing a good job out there, and the people who criticize often have very little idea what guys are going through. They never will. I don't have flashbacks or bad dreams or anything. It helps being around people who've seen what you've seen. My other half is an ex-traffic copper, so I can talk to her too. She's seen some pretty bad things. I had one bad moment when I was out in theatre. I happened to see somebody else's job pictures, and I suddenly smelt the blood, the explosives. It's an indescribable smell, metallic, cloying, horrible. That was from seeing the aftermath of on a monitor. My outlook on things is pretty fatalistic now. I'd say that was one change me. It's either your time or isn't. You can do everything you possibly can to protect yourself, but what we all are doing is inherently dangerous, and whether it's luck, your time, whenever you want to call it, you can do everything right and still get killed, or you can have a lucky miss. In Foreign Fields by Dan Collins. 3rd Commando Brigade, Helmand Assault, Ewan Southerby Tailyor. Now, most people know I talk about Michael Clapp more often than Ewan Southerby Tailyor, but he was, of course, the second author who helped Michael Clapp compile his book, Amphibious Assault Falklands. He is a Falklands veteran himself. He was in charge of the landing craft deployed, and yeah, he is a really, really good guy. Smith held his confirmatory orders group at Argyll on the 16th of December, during which he explained his deception plan prior to the assault on Zangun and Calais. Smith planned to put the Prince of Wales Royal Regiment's reconnaissance platoon and the L Company forward, to be followed by J Company, while leaving the CO-42 commander, Charlie Stickand, and with K Company and the Commando reconnaissance force to continue securing the southern checkpoints. He used the Estonians to secure Chari Angier, having feinted towards Zargun Calais. That night he ordered the Princess of Wales Royal Regiment reconnaissance platoon in their scimitars to feint a recce north of the Syrian Calais towards Chazim Mirza, hoping to convince the Taliban that that was the primary direction of his advance. Once the feint had been made, Smith ordered the recce platoon to then provide overwatch along the final route to Zargun Calais. At 03:30, shortly after the recce platoon left, J Company began their move to the expected battle via a forming up position just north of Lugubah. Despite, perhaps because of, the low-key response to the latter stages of the securing of Shin Calais, the Taliban had been expected to respond in some way. Sure enough, they had done just that, occupying and fortifying a line of compounds running north of Shin Calais and Nadir al, which would have to be cleared or bypassed. There was an added complication too, which further showed the ISAF expectation of a warm welcome to becoming true. To prevent wheeled movement, the enemy had dug ditches all across all the roads and tracks that led to Zargun Calais from the south. Tedious and time-consuming, this was an entirely unexpected happening, and meant that one light and one medium-wheeled tractor would now have to be brought up to fill them. The men of the battle group had known that during the approach to Zargun Calais they could face a 360-degree battle. This, however, would suit them, as they knew that positional battles were more easily won against the Taliban, who, it had been long acknowledged, were in fact at their most dangerous when they popped up unexpectedly. Smith was also keen to use the Estonians. Their mechanized infantry had a fine reputation under command of the aptly named Major Rigor, a stern, self-contained man. Smith went to meet him to explain his plan, asked if it was within the Estonians' capabilities, and wondered how Rigor felt about it all. Rigor had replied in the affirmative with as few words as possible. The Estonians needed no more direction than a United Kingdom infantry company, as they were highly respected for being impressively professional. Once told what to do, they did it. Smith was a mortar admirer. In the close areas of the green zone and with the loosely scattered compounds, the 60mm mortar was extremely useful, and the Estonians' mortars were to be particularly effective supporting L Company at Yellow 4, when the foreign mortars were firing across the battle space supporting a British company, having had little or no cross-training about their standard operating procedures. This is a cool book. But that leads us rather nicely into the Falklands itself, and this is Above All Courage, compiled by Max Arthur. Personal stories from the Falklands War. Let's see. Nurse Jackie Hayward, Queen Alexandra's Royal Naval Nursing Service. I was on nights in the intensive care unit at Haslar Royal Navy Hospital when they told me I was going to the Falklands on Sunday. This was Friday night. But I got my things together because I volunteered and I wanted to go. My husband, who was in 4-2 Commando, was already down there. He later got a message from the matron to say that I'd arrived on the Uganda. We were flown in an uncomfortable Hercules from Bryce Norton out to Uruguay, and were met at the airport by armed guards and searched on the plane. It was then that it would hit us that we were going to war. We had a police escort through the town, and everyone stopped and stared at us. We joined a small hospital ship, but the captain didn't know anything about us. He thought he was getting 13 males, which is what he'd asked for in the signal. Instead, he got 3 females. We were soon transferred by helicopter to the Uganda, which was very exciting and became the first female nurses to be on the ship since the last World War. We met up with the Uganda at the Red Cross box, which was an agreed safe area, somewhere in the middle of the ocean. During the day, we went into the Falklands Sound and took out casualties, but at night we had to go back and rendezvous in this Red Cross box with the other ships. We got onto Uganda after Goose Green, and before the other major battles. When I arrived, I was told I was going to work on the intensive care unit. I'd worked on the intensive care unit at Haslar, but only for 3 weeks, during which time I hadn't actually got any patients. But at least I had become familiar with the machinery, which was a big help. The first day on board, we were told to find our way about the ship. I'd never been on a big ship before, and I was seasick, but not bad enough to keep me in bed all the time. I kept thinking about my puppy, which I had left with a neighbour. We were told to report to the ward. It was a set in the different watches, and we started working 4 hours on and 4 hours off. Then, when we got lots of patients, things became too hectic and we got called back. Casualties were coming in too quick for a normal routine. They tried 6 hours off and 4 hours on, but in the end we did 4 hours on and 8 hours off because we were getting so tired. When I actually started in intensive care, there was only one patient who was a Marine. The rest were on the other wards. Everything was fairly easy, and really there was a bit of a lull, but the Galahad changed all that. I'd only seen one Burns case before, and that was an old lady who'd fallen into a fire, which was quite nasty. At 8 that morning, I'd just come off duty when I heard the call, all hands to flying stations. I sensed immediately something was very worrying. I went straight back away to my ward to see these horrifying sights. So many burnt and disfigured men. You couldn't recognize any of them. They looked like teddy bears. Their faces were all terribly swollen, and they were in such pain. They were Chinese men as well as ordinary men, and you couldn't tell the difference. They were all black and swollen. The burnt flesh left a smell that I'd never forget. The fire had singed all their hair. The clothing they wore protected them, but their hands and faces really got it. One was burnt all over, and the only thing that was perfect was his feet. They were immaculate. I think he was going up the ladder when the blast hit the whole of his back. He came straight to us in intensive care. It was horrible. All right, sight. I remember Simon Weston, who was really badly burnt, coming through with another Welsh guard. I was amazed because they were talking to each other. They were really so cheerful. It was unbelievable. I just stood there and looked at them and thought, how can you be so cheerful when you really hurt so much? He was asked how everybody was and had seen so-and-so, and this was because his face and had they seen so-and-so, and this was so much that his eyes had closed and he couldn't see. He really was so brave. He didn't often show he was in pain. Forgotten Voices of the Falklands, the real story of the Falklands War, compiled by Hugh McManners. Brigadier Julian Howard Thompson, Commander 3rd Brigade, Commando Brigade. The intensity of the air attacks persuaded the Navy to sail the vulnerable merchant ships from the anchorage. Canberra should have been my dressing station, taking the wounded out to the hospital ship, Uganda. She carried 90,000 24-hour rations and most of my medical people. Instead, we had to fly the dressing station ashore to set up in the old meatpacking factory at Ajax Bay. Canberra sailing a 3rd Para and 40 and 42 Commander with only the equipment the men were actually carrying. The same happened on the 2nd Para when the Norland was ordered to sail. So the 3,000 men now ashore had to be supplied by the logistics regiment immediately, even though it was still offloading. Unloading all the logistics supplies took a further 5 days. The helicopters and landing craft were fully employed doing this, leaving us no means of moving out of the beachhead. Major Philip Neen, D Company Commander, 2 Para. When we got ashore and secured Sussex Mountain, there was a complete lack of medium-term objectives and no orders. We were in limbo for 4 or 5 days because nobody knew what the Argentines would do next. Company Sergeant Major Peter John Rickens, B Company 2 Para. For the first 10 days ashore, we didn't dry out from getting wet making the landing. Feet were a big problem. My company strength was 94. In the first week, I lost 14 men from immersion or trench foot. We wore only 1 pair of socks and kept the 2nd pair under our armpits drying off during the day to wear at night. Our army issue boots let the water in very badly. Private Alejandro Ramon Cano, paratrooper, Grupa Artilleria Aerotransportat. When they informed us the English had taken the beach of San Carlos, then we knew we had lost. And that's how it goes. I'm not sure I agree with some of the chapter titles. The chapter titles in this book are a bit weird. Mixed messages and wishful thinking, Liberation Day, immediate action, demonstrations of serious intent, Vida en las Islas Malvinas, suntans and rifle oil, racing south, First Blood, total exclusion, sinking the Belgrano, the Argentinians strike back, softening up, landing in Bomani, sacrificing pawns, London needs good news, moral domination, a brand new ship, disaster at Fitzroy Roads, getting on with it, footsore and ruthless, night killing, firepower, a need for honor. I'm not sure about those titles, but that's it. And it is almost 15 minutes, and I do try and keep these 4 random books to 15 minutes. So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's watching. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed. Thank you to everyone who's pressed the little bell down below. And thank you to everyone who is a patron. As I said before, you keep me in books. Thank you.
Take care.